Heard of Haiti when dictator Jean-Claude Duvalier fled the country earlier this year. Baby Doc led the second generation of Duvalier family rule. For 29 years, they controlled the country, turning themselves into one of the richest families in the world, while Haiti's 6 million people ranked among the poorest. Baby Doc's exit was heralded worldwide as a chance for a dictatorship to become a democracy. But the country is now being run by the remnants of a ruling committee put in place by Baby Doc as he left. This week, security forces opened fire on a demonstration, killing 7 people, wounding more than 50. There is no government as we know it. Only Haiti's brutal history, which seems destined to repeat itself. They were called the Tonton Macoute. The name means boogeyman. A hardcore group of 20,000 Macouts kept the Haitian people in line and the Duvaliers in power.
Duvalier had created a police state in Haiti. The Tonton Macouts, officially known as the Volunteers for National Security, were just like the SS under Hitler. They were given full power. They were only accountable to the presidency. And both Francois and Jean-Claude Duvalier used to tell him in public rallies that you are the backbones of my government. You are entitled to do whatever you want.
For 3 years, Jean-Jacques Honorat ran the Haitian Center for Human Rights in New York. He was thrown out of Haiti in 1980 for criticizing the Duvalier regime. Now back from exile, he believes the Macouts may have killed as many as 100,000 people under Baby Doc.
Murder and denunciation were the instruments of terror. Killing was the only way for the regime to maintain what they call peace and stability, what was labeled, even in the American press, peace and stability. Remember that. That's how you used to call the situation in Haiti, peace and stability, right?
What would you have called it?
Peace and stability, yes, but peace and stability that exists in a cemetery. Haiti was a cemetery.
We went to a graveyard, if you can call it a graveyard, dumping ground for bodies near the towns of Bon Repos and Titayen, where local people told us that the Tonton Macouts had just dumped people that they had killed, disposed of them there.
Yeah. Well, it was known that Titayen was for dead bodies, for people killed by the Tonton Macouts.
Did the Americans know what was happening here in Haiti? The extent of what was happening, the embassies, the State Department, the White House?
They knew, of course. We've been saying that Haiti was America's best kept secret.
If the countryside was a place of terror for some, it was a land of opportunity for anyone with the Duvaliers and the Macouts behind them. Americans could do big business here if they bought the right friends. Butch Ashton built up a multi-million-dollar string of businesses under the Duvaliers. Large American firms that want to invest hire him for his government connections and his knowledge of how Haiti works.
Our famous Tonton Macouts, quote unquote, were trained by our U.S. Marine Corps, whether we realize it or not, and armed by our United States government as well. We propped up Baby Doc. We kept him in power.
When you say that the Marines trained the Tonton Macoute, what do you mean?
Well, I mean what I said. I'm saying that in 1961-62, we had a U.S. naval mission here that was supposedly training the Army. And at the same time we were training the Army, we were knowingly training the militia, which part of that militia was the Tonton Macoute, but the militia was the Volunteers of Sécurité Nationale. And our weapons, our M1s, our rejected weapons were given to the militia, and our new weapons were given to the Army. And we knew this, and we had actual Marines training these civilians. And anybody that doesn't know this is fooling themselves and not myself, because I was here during that whole period.
The Marines commander later denied knowingly training Macouts. Did you ever see any of the Marines training the Tonton Macoute?
Certainly.
He has seen more of the Macouts than just their training. One of Ashton's many businesses is Haiti Citrus, which grows limes for export to the States. His groves in a place called Bastrak-Tibizet were once used by local farmers to grow their own food. 10 years ago, the peasants leased their land to his company. When the leases expired last year, the trouble began. Father Franz Grandois and other Catholic priests tried to help the peasants when they were renegotiating with Haiti Citrus. But anyone pushing for a better price or their land back came up against the Tonton Macoute. They say the Macouts resorted to torture to enforce the company's terms. What was the arrangement between the Macoute and Haiti Citrus?
They paid the commander every 2 weeks. To control, to intimidate, to crush, to break any opposition.
There are peasants in that area, as well as the Catholic Church, that say part of your method was to put a commander of the Tonton Macoute on the payroll and to use the Tonton Macouts to enforce your agreement. Did you do that?
Never. There have been people, the mayor of the area, who happened to be a Tonton Macoute and is a leader of the area, was in fact not on a payroll, but he was on a consultant basis for security in the fields because of outsiders letting their cattle and their horses loose in our fields.
The commander came with 40 Macouts to this area to attack, to seek revenge.
What specifically did they do?
They would take the people, they would take them to prison, they would beat them. They would tie their hands and feet together with rope, like a ball, and beat them.
What did you say to the allegation itself, that you'd hired Tonton Macouts to protect your fields?
Absolutely not. Never.
Except this one mayor who was
the mayor, who was a Tonton Macoute, known Tonton Macoute, agreed. But he was the mayor. We were aiming at the mayor. We were looking at the judicial system. Now, if part of the judicial system at that time involved Tonton Macouts, I don't think we can be responsible for that.
No one has taken responsibility for the Macouts. After Baby Doc fled, they were formally disbanded, and some were beaten to death by mobs in the streets. Most Macouts still have their weapons. None has been prosecuted. Last month, while we were there, people were angry at the lack of real change, and when an army captain beat up a taxi driver, that anger exploded. The days of arbitrary arrest and harassment were not over. The new strongmen sent out to keep the peace are called the Leopards, Army shock troops organized by the American military mission in the first years of Baby Doc's rule. The American military attaché at that time told us the Leopard Corps was his idea. The embassy now denies any involvement in their formation.
It was trained by the American military mission. It was equipped by the American military mission. They had the Leopards created as a force to replace the Tonton Macouts.
They wanted them to be a counterinsurgency group. At least that's the way it was told to me.
When James Byers got the Haitian government contract to train and equip the Leopards, it was 1971. There was a ban on all direct U.S. military assistance. His Miami firm Aerotrade did privately what the American government would not do publicly. His trainers were all American ex-military men. This is the first time he's talked about the Leopards.
What has happened now is that the Leopards, who are a formal group of soldiers, are now taking the place of the Tonton Macoute.
Were they a crack unit?
Let me put it this way. They were a hell of a lot better than anything else they ever had down there. But now what they are is palace-controlled terrorists. And I understand after John Claude left that they showed their true colors and went around killing and beating people. That's not what they were trained for, but that's obviously what they're used for now.
After Baby Doc left, one of the first U.S. aid shipments was new riot gear. The heavy arms started flowing 15 years ago through Aerotrade. What kinds of equipment were you bringing in?
Fully automatic weapons, thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition, helmets, uniforms, 30 caliber machine guns, 50 caliber machine guns, 20 millimeter rapid fire cannons. We gave them all of this. Well, they didn't even have toothbrushes or shaving equipment or underwear or anything else.
The CIA knew you were doing all this? How intimately? How much did they know of what you were doing?
Everything. Everything. They got copies of the contracts.
When we asked the CIA about aero trade, what are they going to say to us?
Aero trade who?
And Washington wouldn't give you any trouble about shipping in all those arms to Haiti.
No. What were they going to do with it? The Haitians. They weren't going to attack anybody. Supposedly that stuff was for these so-called threats of invasion, which was ridiculous. But to any nation like that, they're toys. Unfortunately, the so-called toys that we sent and trained the leopards with were used against the people.
He was going to buy something to bring to the kids. But when he get there, on the street, an army guy called him and tell him to come over. He told him, walk. Army car, they hold up him, they beat him up.
The leopards are regular army.
Leopard.
The regime hasn't changed. Only Duvalier is absent.
You don't think these tactics are going to change?
I think they're going to worsen.
The brutality?
Of course, yes.
Why?
Why? Peace and tranquility.
Haitians now refuse to suffer in silence. This leopard victim is paraded for all to see.
If we bring a man like Duvalier in power and we arm him and we keep him in power and then we throw him out, well, I hope we know what we're doing, because it doesn't make any sense to me. I know one thing. Our U.S. taxpayer is paying for that.
The CIA declined comment. The State Department refused our request for an interview. This month, Assistant Secretary of State Elliott Abrams returned from Haiti, pledging more American military assistance. He said, quote, obviously a new democratic Haiti will need a new professional force to maintain order.